And we are back. Our featured guest tonight is making her mark in the country music world. Her most recent album, Revival, was hailed for its artistry and personal storytelling. And her fantastic podcast, Color Me Country with Rissi Palmer, has become a repository of knowledge and a voice for people of color within the country music world. Please give a warm weekly show welcome to Rissi Palmer. Rissi, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So I believe you do you call North Carolina home now?
I do. I'm talking to you from Durham, North Carolina.
And is that where you grew up?
No, I grew up, I was born in Swickley, Pennsylvania, and I grew up in Eureka, Missouri.
Now, was there a lot of music in your home at the time? Is that where you kind of got some of your early influences from, or did you learn that later?
Absolutely. My parents were huge music fans, and we listened to so much music. Neither one of my parents are musicians. I'm the only musician, but they were avid music fans, and we were always going to see live music and that sort of thing. So yeah, my influences totally came from what my parents were listening to.
Now, at what point did country music come into the picture for you?
It always was. It was just a part of what we listened to. Both my parents are Southern. They're both from Georgia. And so we listened to Patsy Cline and Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton just as much as Shaka Khan and Tina Turner and Earth, Wind and Fire and everything like that. So I got a good mix of music growing up.
So at what point did you think or believe that a career in country music might be really possible for you?
I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you. It was because of my managers at the time. When I was 18 years old, I started working with two women by the name of Us Girls Entertainment was the name of their company.
Okay.
And we started working on a demo. And I knew that I love country music. I knew that I would write country songs and that sort of thing. But like, I didn't see anybody like me. So I didn't think that it was something that I could do. And I remember we were working on a demo and they asked me, Rissi, what are you always writing in your notebook? And so I sang them one of my songs and they were like, Rissi, this is a country song. And I was like, yeah. And they're like, you write this kind of thing all the time? And I was like, yeah. And they said, well, Rissi, this is your thing. This is what you need to do. So honestly, without their encouragement, I don't know that I would have pursued it, quite frankly.
Now, it's obvious in the South here that we haven't done a great job of how do I put it? Championing, teaching, or sharing the positive influences people of color have had on country music. Who do you think of immediately when you start teaching people about that history?
Oh my gosh, there's so many names. So like I always like to begin at the beginning. So, the Carter family is thought of as the first family of country music. And a lot of their music is extremely foundational and has been inspirational to artists for years. Well, the Carter family, like Ma Carter, learned how to play the guitar from a Black preacher by the name of Leslie Riddle, who acted as an A&R person for them. Of course, he didn't get the credit for that, but he was. And he was the person that went out and found a lot of songs that were on their first album. I think of D. Ford Bailey. D. Ford Bailey was the first sound that anybody heard on the old radio show for the Grand Ole Opry. He was one of the first Black performers to ever play on the Grand Ole Opry. And again, like he couldn't stay in the same hotels as Hank Williams and everyone else. And so, there's so many names, and it's not just so many times you just like everything gets narrowed down to Charlie Pride or Darius Rucker or Mickey Guyton. And it's like, it started a long time before that. But those are two names I just thought of just off the top of my head.
Having said all that, was there a stigma with country music that you personally had to overcome to really give yourself to it on a personal level, or was it natural? Or
For me, I just always love, as an artist, I've just always loved the artistry of it. And I've loved the way that the songs were. The songwriting is just, it's these extremely complex emotions and situations told in really simplistic ways. And there's an art to that. And as a songwriter, I've always aspired to like, I want to master that. The way that they tell those stories, I want to master that. And that's what drew me in, and it didn't have a color. It was just a sound and a vibe that I loved.
Now, having still said that, though, you're one of the only Black country artists to chart since the charting system pretty much started. Does that excite you, humble you, a little bit of both?
A little bit of both. And then also saddens, it's also that feeling as well. Yeah, it's unbelievable, especially considering that I charted in 2007, and at that time I was the first Black woman in 20 years to be on the country charts. So yeah, it's a mix of all those things.
Now, why do you think your music has been able to find so much success in that way when I'm sure that there's been others who haven't? In other words, you somehow managed to break through some of that stigmatism. Is there something about the message? Is there something about your delivery, your artistry, a combination? What do you think? What might you attribute that to?
I wish I could sit here and tell you.
Or is it just damn good?
I wish I could sit here and be like, oh, it's because it's me, David. That's all.
Yeah.
No, I think honestly, I mean, like the real answer to this question, and like ego aside, I think that I had a tremendous amount of resources be put behind my music. And yeah, I think I'm a good singer. Yeah, I think I'm a great songwriter, or not a great song, but a good songwriter. And all of the above, and I think I'm cute and fun and all those things. But like there's a lot of cute, fun, talented people that don't have the resources that I did that were put behind me. And so, that's a driving force behind a lot of the work that I do now, because a lot of people don't have those resources. So yeah.
And when you first started, you had the opportunity to play the Grand Ole Opry, and then you had kind of a full circle moment where you were able to do it again, right?
Well, so I just want to clarify, because I think the press release kind of made this sound. So I had actually gotten to play the Grand Ole Opry like 5 times at that point, like between 2007 and 2009. I'd played it like 5 times, which was amazing every time. But this year I got to play it for the first time in 13 years. After 2009, I hadn't had an opportunity to play again. And so this was my first time back in 13 years, and it was amazing.
Well, let me ask you this. What song, whether it be yours or someone else's, gives you the most personal joy to play?
That's a great question. Can I take 2 songs?
Yeah. They're your songs.
Awesome.
Or somebody else's songs.
I really love to play my song Butterflies. It's from my first album. I love that song, and it's a really special song to me because it was one of the first things that I ever sat down with a guitar and like completely composed, and like that was the music. And so what you hear is what I wrote on my couch. And I was like 19, and I love that song. And it has special meaning to me because when my husband proposed to me, our wedding rings have butterflies on but you can't see that, but there's butterflies on the back of them, and it's because of that song. So I love that. And then another song that I've started performing recently that I really, really love is Linda Martell's Bad Case of the Blues. Linda Martell is a very special person to me. She was the first Black woman to ever play the Grand Ole Opry. And that song was one of the big songs from her only album. And I feel like, I don't know, like she's like the patron saint of my show and of women of color in country music. And so that it gives me great joy to sing that song.
So you've got this fantastic podcast now, Color Me Country, and I believe the idea for it, did it start with Lil Nas X?
Well, it was a mixture of things. First of all, one of my best friends had been telling me for years that I needed to put all this country music in knowledge and angst into something, and I was like, no one's gonna want to listen to me. And at the beginning of the quarantine, when we're all home and there's no shows or anything, I had a lot of time to read and a lot of time to see the misinformation that was out there. And because of Lil Nas X getting on the country charts and all the subsequent controversy that went along with that, there were like a million think pieces. And I'm reading these think pieces and I'm like, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. And so I've tried to find a way to correct that information. and to put the actual narrative, the real narrative out there. And so I just called a bunch of my friends that I had worked with, and it started out as a podcast and is now a radio show since Apple Music has become involved. So yeah, it was mainly me just wanting to make sure that the stories were told accurately, and who better to tell our stories than us. So it's conversations between me and artists that I admire, artists that I know, and everybody just telling their unvarnished truth.
Now, I read a piece of your interview with Darius Rucker, and he said in response to some of his experiences something that you kind of said earlier, which is, I didn't know music was color. Um, and that kind of hit me hard. What did you take away from your interview with him?
Well, first of all, Darius is like one of the nicest people on earth. Like, he really is, and he's got the greatest laugh. He's got like the uncle laugh. Like, I
Yeah.
love it. It's deep and it's big.
Yeah.
I appreciated his candor, because I don't think that he has been quite that honest in any other interview that I've ever seen. And I've read a lot of stuff in preparing for our conversation. So I appreciated that. And it was a relief having that conversation with him, because he admitted a lot of things. He said a lot of things that I had been feeling for a long time and never heard it echoed. And I thought maybe it was only my experience, because again, I didn't get as famous as Darius. And so, I didn't think, I was like, well, maybe it was different for him. But it was a relief to hear that it wasn't that different. A relief, and also sad that it wasn't that different. But yeah.
So, Rissi, we've got to go to a quick commercial break and pay the bills. Can you stick around and come back after the break?
For sure, I'm here.